All right. You're going to experience. All right, you experiencers. I don't know if that's a word. You're about to experience. Experiencers, you're about to experience a new experience of the Bill DeMott Experience. Hurricane Bill, of course, is with me. Bill DeMott. I'm Jeff Townsend. Man, you dodged the bad part of the hurricane, Bill.
Ben, we always sit there and say, we're always careful, but, we skated through it compared to a lot of people in the state as it went up to the Georgia state line and things like that. And, now it's over the Carolinas, over that way. But, yeah, a lot of wind, a lot of rain, a lot of tornado watches or warnings, whichever one's worse. I think the warnings are worse. So we had
warning. Well, here the warnings are worse. Yes.
Yeah.
Warnings go off on your phone.
If it's the watch, yeah.
Yeah, you get the warnings on your phone there too.
Yeah, it went at about 3:00 in the morning on Wednesday, 3 a.m. And the rule of thumb in the DeMott Mansion is if Mama's not up telling everybody to go to a certain room, then we don't have to worry about it because she's from Iowa, so tornadoes are her forte. So as my daughter slept and my son, they got the alarm went up, but they're like, Mom's not coming to get me. I'm going to go back to sleep. So we got a rain and a lot of stuff, but we're very...
We see our fair share of tornadoes here in Indiana as well. It's a Midwest thing for sure.
Yeah, she's the tornado expert. But we fared the rains and everything like that, so all is good.
I'm a kind of a tornado nerd myself, and I used to actually watch a lot of documentaries and read about it a lot. Can you imagine before there was a warning system? Like just before you had any way of knowing at all? That would be terrifying.
The only warning system you had is what you saw, right?
What you heard, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
And then by the time you see it and hear it, it's too late.
I was telling my son and his buddy, because they had off of school, all school shut down. So they were over at the house messing around. I told them the story how we were, my good friend Mickey J, the referee, and we were driving through New Mexico. And a lot of it's like barren, there's not a lot of stuff until you get to like the next town in certain areas. Well, off in a distance, the landscape started lighting up. I'm like, it's great lightning and, cool little atmosphere. No, lo and behold, it stayed lit up and we saw the funnel cloud chase us into the city. Like there was nowhere for us to go. So you couldn't ditch the car. You couldn't find so we were trying to outrun the damn tornado. And we got to the valley parking part of the hotel right as the tornado ripped through the town.
Wow.
But it kind of goes off your thing of you without sirens or anything. All you had was your vision and to see what the weather was like. So it's now we got alarms for everything, for crying out loud. Oh, it's gonna rain. It's gonna flood. It's gonna So.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like it did a lot of damage. I watch a lot of coverage on it just out of interest. So you're basically Orlando, just to hit the pinpoint. You're in the same county as Orlando, right? So you're it was in the Tampa area, right? That's where it really hits. So
yeah, it came up the West Coast and into they call it the Bend, the Panhandle there. So up by Tallahassee.
It normally doesn't come up through the Gulf, right? Like normally it'll go. Sometimes it'll go over over Florida, then get even stronger when it hits the Gulf.
Yeah.
And then kind of go into Texas, Alabama, wherever it may. But this time it came right up through there. I think that's kind of a rare occurrence.
So it's that whole, so we're Central Florida. Yeah. Orlando, the Orange County area is Central Florida. So we got the heavy bands, the heavy rain bands and the heavy winds, but thank goodness, we're okay. But there's a lot of damage up in that bend and North Florida and into Georgia. So hats off to all the men and women that are out there, the energy people and everybody out there cleaning up. Just be safe.
I know Austin Aries was telling me about his last car. He said, well, I lost that in last year's hurricane, but I'm sure I didn't even think about that. The amount of vehicles and stuff, the insurance and all that has to come into play.
Yeah. My wife's car was totaled because of all the water damage.
Oh, this time?
Last year's.
Okay.
We went to change the lights in the car, and there was 3 inches of water through the whole body of the car, and it rotted all the electric and everything. So we never even knew that, and so they totaled the whole car. So the damage that's going to happen from this is, it's going to go on for months with the houses and the trees and the cars and stuff. So
how's things going with the foundation this week?
super, super busy and geared up for, as school started. I think we touched on it last time. The school starts, we get very busy. So we were doing the kind of crunching the numbers for everybody to kind of understand what we were doing. I don't know if we talked about it last time, but we traveled in the summer months, so from May to August. We talked about that, right?
Yeah. All the miles,
so
yeah.
We just figured out what we did from January to April before leading into the summer, and we did the same numbers. So it's been extraordinary. We average like 20,000 miles a year traveling. And so
probably increases every year too, right? The more you guys kind of branch out. Yeah. And it's even the podcast inbox. I don't know if you got my message. Like
what a great message.
We even get stuff now interested in speaking, not even with wrestling. So obviously the foundation is far reaching beyond the work that you've done previously. It's a whole new chapter of your life. So, and it kind of crosses over to everything that you're doing, Bill.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody who's reaching out to us on the podcast, email, and through Twitter and all the
BillDeMott.com. Yeah,
all the social media platforms, because it's great to see those. Like, to me, that's better than gold when someone says, "Hey, one, they're listening to what we're doing," which is great. So hopefully we're entertaining people. But then, to your point, we're dropping a little bit of knowledge every week, and people are picking up on it. And to me, that's the best way, is word of mouth. You can't duplicate that. I think when we keep reaching people like that, it's amazing. So that was definitely a bright spot in the week, receiving that message from you this week.
Yeah. About $5 million might be able to do that if we could just spend it on advertising. But that's
yeah. We wouldn't be mad at that. We'll take half to start.
Yeah, I think
half to start.
Anyway, Bill, yeah, man, it's awesome. Keep up the great work with the foundation. A lot to talk about this week. We don't have a set topic like you and I talked about before. We will just give a heads up next week. Bill and I just committed to doing a dedication episode to. Bill, I'll let you share what we're going to do next week. We're going to do a deep dive.
Well, yeah, I think we're getting very famous for our deep dives, and next week's going to be a really special one. We're going to talk about Bray Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda, and a lot of people have touched on it, and they will continue to touch on it. We're going to take a deep dive, maybe a little different perspective on things, and share some stories and knowledge about Wyndham and the family. But I'm looking forward to that. I think I'll be ready for it by then, if that makes sense to everyone. I think I'll be ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same. Like, we'll obviously touch up on what happened, but in detail-wise, we could definitely kind of spin and do our own thing on it. And what we apparently do is our deep dives. So, and we'll do that to the life and career of him, as far as what we know, obviously. So I'm excited, man. I think that'll be neat.
Yeah, it'll be really cool to do that.
So obviously, Bill, you're the one that actually told me. I did not know until you told me. So this really happened right before the recording, or the Bill DeMott Experience. And you were the one that told me, man. I did not know. I had just got home for the evening, started eating dinner, and I wasn't on social media at all. So you actually broke the news to me.
Yeah, I was probably here at home, and my phone started blowing up. And usually, wrestling rules apply to everything to me. So when your phone starts blowing up, it's one, hopefully nobody's, family-wise, everybody's okay. It's nothing deep emergency, or it's just my guys all got on the same text message at one time. But a lot of the message, "Are you okay? Did you hear?" And it's, oh man, when you hear "Are you okay?" that means something happened. We need to address it. And before I could answer that message, it was coming all over the social media and everything else. And then when Triple H put it out, that was it. That the masses heard about it. And you and I had, through text, we communicated, and I just told you I think I've had enough wrestling for. And it wasn't even wrestling. I think it's just anything with the word wrestling in it. But that's it's different, man. It's loss is never easy. But when these things happen, these unexpected things really, really take a toll on. I think as human beings, it takes a toll on us, right? You didn't have to know Wyndham to ride with him or anything else. He reached so many people and touched so many lives. but for those of us who were blessed enough to know him as a person, it was just a lot. And I don't know what, 2 days before or day before, it was tried to time that Terry Funk, and
I was actually in the process of. I'll just to give you a heads up. Bill doesn't know what we're going to talk about before we do. So as far as setting up next week's episode, that's actually a first. Bill typically does not get any heads up. That's the way he liked it. But so I was actually in the process of writing a Terry Funk. We were going to talk about Terry Funk's career, which we already talked about before doing. Unfortunately, it was kind of like his passing. So we will get to that for sure.
It was just but it, and not to make lighter of that loss, but we all knew that Terry was, health-wise, he was declining a little bit. He had some health issues. So no matter if you expect it or not, just the Funker, man, he's a legend, and he's one of those guys for me. Like, we weren't best buds, but we were buddies, and I had the opportunity not only just to work with him and hang out with him, get to laugh with him and all those things and learn from him. So it was like, he could be 200 years old, and the time is passing. It's still a downer, you know what I mean? So you kind of reflecting on that, and in the wrestling world, I think in any world, but in the wrestling world, when you share so much time on the road with guys and girls, it takes its toll on you. So we had Terry, who fought the good fight long enough until it was time for him to go to the West Texas reunion. And then, 2 days later, we get the news about Bray Wyatt. So that's when I sent you that message. Go, man, I think and that's hard for me to do, because sometimes, as they say, the show must go on. Like wrestling stops for nobody, and the world stops for nobody, right? Everything continues. But for me, it was just that thing of, hey, man, I got to take a timeout. I got to put myself in timeout. And so that's what I did.
Luckily, when podcasting like we are, kind of write your own rules. We're doing this for the listeners and just to have a good time. So that's the benefit of podcasting, man. We own it. We're managing it. We kind of, we report to the listeners and ourselves. So.
But that was the guilt, right? There's always, to me, and I know to you, because you have your hand in, you're iron in so many fires, especially in the podcast world. There's that guilt of, man, I feel really bad about this. However, this situation calls for something different. So I think that adds on the guilt of missing a week is really strong. And here's why it's the guilt's so strong, because I enjoy the hell out of this. I think we're doing such an amazing, I don't want to say job, because it's just, we have fun. We drop the knowledge. We've done some really good stuff. The feedback's getting there. The following's getting there. And then I feel like if I shortchange someone, I really feel guilty about that. Hopefully I'll never get over that. But, as it's structure, right? And so you feel like, I got to do it. But I appreciate the deep breath last week of just being able to digest everything. And I appreciate everybody understanding that and still firing off the questions on Twitter and everything. So that was awesome.
Yep. We'll go ahead and say, we asked the question last episode, if anybody likes to see on the podcast, start throwing some ideas out there, maybe we can stir up some trouble. I thought the handful that I got the most suggestions on were great.
Yeah, there's some good names on that list, and they're all they're all doable. They're all buddies, and they're all open to doing that stuff. So we're gonna start reaching out to these cats and start having some familiar faces on here, and then some familiar voices going forward, I hope.
So let's pivot a little bit away from this sad, and next week will be, I'm sure it'll be a very happy thing, but yet when you and I podcast together, we tend to get very emotional. So there will be emotional moments next week, I'm sure. We could get emotional about anything, but I'm sure next week will be one. Until that, and in the meantime, though, let's talk about some things going on right now. So let's start off with somebody that was on that list. He has suggested quite a few times. Tyrus, in the news that came out.
How about it's so funny that I swear, dude, you're right next door to me in the next house. one of my trooper buddies who's a big, I don't want to say fan, but she knows what I did in my former life, and her and I are very tight. She's very tight with the foundation, Trooper Barge. She sent me a message and she asked Lacey today, "Do you know who Tyrus is?" And Lacey's laughing because Big G's been with me since the beginning. He came to Deep South. We trained and that's where he got his start and cut his teeth. So he made the announcement of retirement. And while he did that on Fox this week, he had mentioned the name that should never be mentioned ever. And he said Bill DeMott. And it was in a thank you to a lot of the people in his career, Dusty Rhodes and all these people. He said Bill DeMott. So the people who watch Fox naturally want to go, how's he know Bill? How does he know Bill? Because a lot of people don't know what I used to do or what, the evil.
Isn't that crazy? The longer we get away from things. Yeah.
So it was great and he's always, Big G, I call him Big G. Tyrus is always promoting the DeMott family, the foundation, and what we do. So I think it's awesome because I've watched his career, his path, knew what he did before, and he said he didn't have to do, he's a bodyguard for Snoop. He was set. He didn't have to do anything else. But talk about a super intelligent, like if
he's
you
smart
want
guy,
to meet something and here's the best part is he plays the big, bulky, muscular, hard looking guy to such a great point that people try to come out with these big words and try to lap him. And then he opens up his mouth and he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's just so freaking intelligent and smart and up on current events. And now he's toured into his one-man shows and his book was a bestseller. And everything he does, he puts his heart into it. So I told him this on social media. We go back and forth sometimes with this guy. I said, I'm just excited for the next chapter to see what he does. Super, super great guy. And what he said about it was time to get out at the right time. And with Wyndham passing and having a lot to do with that, I think it's, reflection, right? And I think that's the word I used with you last week was it's just some time for reflection. So I'm super happy for Big G and his family. Always wish him nothing but the best, but I would love to have him on here. One, because he'll
been on here before. We shared that episode not too long ago.
Yeah. He'll make you laugh. He's just amazing. And whenever I have nothing to say, I just shoot him a text message with the hashtag Domino. Because we play dominoes in my house. My wife cooks for all of them. And we used to sit there and just play dominoes and not talk wrestling or anything, just enjoyed each other's company. So super, super big guy. Really happy for him. I know we'll have him on here again, and all good things coming from him and going in his direction.
Yeah, so talented, and he's got a lot of work ahead of him too, outside of wrestling. I mean, he could still be involved in wrestling if he wanted to. We'll see. But he's just so multi-talented, and I think to be able to cross over into something like that from wrestling is super special because you don't always see that. Yeah. And he's able to pull that off, man, which is incredible.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have to thank Jericho for that. Jericho, because and before Chris, you got to thank Mick Foley, right? So that whole bunch of guys there, they open a door for you to become an author, for you to show your creative side and to become part of TV and movies and all these other things that they've got in their hands. Mick Foley never had to do another physical thing again. He could just do book tours the rest of his life and his one-man shows. And Jericho speaks for himself. So Big G just following in those footsteps and doing great things.
Last weekend, I talk about my brother a lot on here. He's my best friend. He is not a wrestling fan necessarily. I showed him Behind the Mat, that documentary, because I was telling him how I kind of wanted to show a little bit of Terry Funk and how he just was relentless, and that's a pretty good documentary for that. As sad as it is, actually. And we watched that, dude, and it's just crazy. You just touched up on so many people that are in it, right? Mick Foley and all that. But it was so cool to show him that side of things, and because some people, he's a big MMA guy, so
Yeah.
and he's kind of got me a little bit converted to watching a lot more to that. And I saw you were watching that the other weekend, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to show him that kind of stuff and see like the grind that it takes, and some of these people that are willing to do that, it's incredible. And then afterwards, Mick Foley's books were amazing, like you said. Jericho's books were amazing, and I think Terry Funk has one out there, doesn't he? I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to get my hands on that bad boy, man. Anyway, Behind the Mat showed that, man. So have you watched Behind the Mat before?
I have seen it. It's been a bit, but I have.
Oh yeah.
I think you have to watch it. It was
yeah. So if you haven't, just check it out. It shows you Terry Funk really just. I think the highlight, and it's sad, but just shows you the reality of. And I'm going to get to the point here. Terry Funk talking to the doctor, and he's talking about his knees in this documentary, right? And he's talking about his He's talking about his good knee, quote, good knee. He said, you're bone to bone, whatever. And then he got to his bad knee, and he said, I could be butchering it, but he said something like, how much longer do you think I can get by with it? He's like, you shouldn't be able to get by now. There's nothing there. And just watching him get out of bed in the morning to do that. But some of these people, man, if you had the possibility to walk away, and we're seeing that more and more in sports too.
Yes.
I think of the Indianapolis Colts, you have people like Pat McAfee, Andrew Luck. That was such a surprising one, right? Like these guys are 30 years old and they're walking away from it. At a certain point in time, money's not the thing anymore. And when you hit that point, is it worth it? And some of these people can do so many other things, like Pat McAfee, like Tyrus. And it's just cool to see people that are talented enough and actually take that leap of faith, because I think that's probably so many people are so more talented than they give themselves credit for. But to take that leap of faith and have that confidence in yourself, which is a point I was getting to, is incredible.
Yeah, if you don't have the backing at home, it makes it even harder, right? Because it's drilled into you, whether you're a football player, baseball player, basketball player, wrestler, whatever it is, Olympic ice skater, you know what I mean? It's just, so you're going to make all that money. I listened to one of the football players who goes, well, I'm going to make millions of dollars, and it's all going to be used on keeping me alive. There's other things in life that are more important, I think, when you start to realize how important we all are.
Yeah.
There's a bigger picture. And if it takes something like Tua, right? Last year was Tua with the concussions, and then DeMar Hamlin with the heart thing.
Yeah.
People start to realize, like, I don't want to be that. And I don't want to put my family through that. And I think, so as we get to Tyrus and things like that, like, realize, like, what a trip it's been, successful. And now let's continue, because if you get into wrestling, more people make the NFL than they'll ever become professional wrestler. That's a given. Like, if they do the stats, you got a better chance of becoming an NFL football player than becoming a WWE superstar. So,
especially baseball, they have like 100. They have 100 rounds in their draft.
So it's one of those things of just take that, bet on yourself again, and shoot for longevity and family time. And listen to Tyrus say how now he's telling his kids, because his kids had a vote, right? I watched the whole episode, and his kids voted, and just the fact they know that daddy's going to be home on weekends more, it's worth the price of anything. So you're right. We see a lot more in sports. I think that the younger athletes are smartening up to, weighing out, the actions and reactions of what they're doing. So I think if you're, and also as an athlete, if you start to get scared or nervous about something like that, that's when it's going to happen too. So you have to take that into account. But to your point, a lot of younger cats are learning from the older guys now, thank goodness. And I wasn't that smart. I didn't learn.
But you did have a good opportunity ahead of you, though, where you transitioned to the next phase of your professional wrestling.
I was very fortunate that way, because just the fact of paying attention and seeing what else was there in the business, right? Some guys come in to completely just wrestle, but I was always around guys and people that guided me to pay attention, learn how it works, learn why this is this. And, just that, I always say sitting under learning trees of different people. So I was very fortunate in that aspect. And I always say Taz was the leader in that, because to me, Taz was the most, and probably is the most successful from in-ring to on-air personality to continue to do that. And so, and Taz was a huge help to me early on as I became a commentator and worked behind the desks. So when that happened, I tried to take full advantage of it. But yeah, it's just a different time and age, and I'm very thankful that the young guys are paying attention to what they feel is necessary.
As I mess with my lights here. Yeah. So would you credit Tough Enough really like a lot for that? How much do you really credit Tough Enough? Because people that don't know would probably say, oh, he probably got that break because Tough Enough.
No, I was doing Tough Enough while I was still an in-ring competitor.
You came back. Yeah, you had that.
Tough Enough was both a blessing and a curse, because once people saw me on Tough Enough, that's all they knew me as.
Afterwards, you had to be Bill DeMott. Yeah,
you had to be that guy, right? And so and that's the golden rule. When the red light's on, you're that guy. When you're media, you're that guy. When you're doing this, you're that guy. And you didn't break or stray from character or things like that. So perception is reality in sports entertainment. And so that's what I was saying. I was really good at what I did, because whether you do or not, people were like, "Oh crap." But I think
I still remember that Funaki match when you came back.
Golly, I still thank him every 6 months and try to send him flowers. He does talk to me. I love Sho Funaki so much. But yeah, it was. I think Tough Enough had a lot to do with that. But I think it was, people seeing what could actually come out of it. So the trading and all that, and then just being fortunate enough to be a commentator and then a producer and an agent and things like that. So.
Wild Bill. We always go down rabbit holes. That's why we do this.
Here's my favorite Terry Funk story.
All right.
South Padre Island. I think we might be the only people that ever been escorted to leave South Padre Island. WCW did this. Was it the spring break thing or something there? We actually got a police escort to get out of town. That's how wild we made South Padre Island. But we were, I forget who the match was. I know Dustin and Terry Funk had something going on. But anyway, I did a run-in, and I got Terry Funk on the outside of the ring. And so we're in South Padre Island. So the outside of the ring is sand. Well, I powerbomb Terry Funk in the sand. And all you hear is, and that was the air coming out of him. And we go about our business. And I wasn't by no means like trying to get him, but I just stuck him with a good one. And it was the sand. For people go, sand's better than a ring. Hell no, give me the ring over sand any day. Because the sand swallowed him. Well, anyway, he comes in the back lane. Jesus Christ. I thought the Harris brothers were stiff. Keep Hugh Morris the hell away from me. Jesus Christ. And that's all he said for the rest of the week. We didn't even work together the rest of the week. So Terry Funk, I wore it as a badge of honor. When you get Terry Funk to say, please don't ever hit me again. And he would rip me about it all the time, because we did the hardcore matches and stuff. And he'd come near me and he'd turn around and go, oh, my daddy said, and he'd walk the other way, But I love Terry Funk.
Yeah, we will have an episode. But yeah, he's just so great. And I was listening to this other podcast, and people my age, younger, they were talking about Chainsaw Charlie and all that. And it's like, man, God, you got like 30 years before that.
Yeah.
This guy was just doing amazing stuff. And that was really that whole stretch of 10 years, Japan through there, was just different. Terry Funk.
Yeah.
ECW. Probably, you were in ECW. He probably one of the single-handed person that saved that company from financial disaster before it made it mainstream.
Yeah. And you'll hear guys like Tommy Dreamer say that, like Terry Funk
before it was it was what we know as ECW.
Yeah.
It was ECW still, but it wasn't extreme.
It was
But
Eastern Championship Wrestling. And
bringing
so-
him in really helped them put them on the map. And he did a lot for that company. And we'll do a deep dive in ECW one day too. But yeah, to me, I worry that people don't my favorite promo from Terry Funk is I don't want to butcher the year, but anyway, he has this rival with Ric Flair, and he has this promo about this dream that he had. He starts out this promo talking about how him and his dad were sitting on the porch at the ranch, and it took him right back to that day. And a big old limousine drove up with a dent in it, and a beautiful lady got out of it. And the whole gist of the story was she hit Ric Flair, right? And she thought she hit some animal, she didn't know what it looked like. It was big, ugly, and he just said, "That's not an animal, or that's not a jackass. That's Ric Flair." It's just a great promo. Stuff that you wouldn't know that if you just watch the Chainsaw Charlie stuff, you might not know how great Terry Funk is.
Right. We're at the age of YouTube and all that stuff now, and you can just go on there and pull up Terry Funk matches. I have to pull up a match because I heard some of the guys talking about it, and I haven't seen it, and it's Dory Funk Jr. and Jack Briscoe. 60 minutes. But then talking about, for people who don't know, they see Terry Funk, and for the real hipsters, Terry Funk was in Roadhouse. See Terry Funk when he was a complete babyface, clean shaven, big burly son of a gun, and he could go. I mean, the Funks were legendary before before they became mainstream. So yeah, I encourage everyone who thinks they know about Terry Funk to get on that YouTube, man. You can see anything and everything he's ever done, and some of his younger stuff is so impressive. And just to see the evolution of what he's done, and what was he, a tag team champion in WWF at the age of 50-something? Him and Mick Foley.
That's what he came out of. He cut himself out of that box.
I mean, at 50-something years old, you're still reinventing yourself and getting the run and doing the things that you did. So, I mean, we could talk about the Funkster forever.
I compare him and Chris Jericho a lot, and I'll tell you why. The ability to transcend generation after generation, and adapt with what you're doing. And it's the way Terry Funk walked. It's the way he did everything. He continued to adapt not only to what he was actually physically capable of or not physically capable of, but he also adapted with what the surroundings were around him. You got to give him credit for that, because a lot of people can't, and that's why you kind of see the fade out. So that's why I compare him to kind of like Chris Jericho. Yeah, because you say he has no business doing what he was doing. And then you think, well, why would you even do that? You don't have to do that. It's not he had to. It's the fact that people didn't think he could. And he just went out there and did it like he was like the most unselfish cat. To me, Terry Funk stands amongst the greats of all time. And he didn't have to be the person he was. We'd go into his hometown on a live event, and it should have been all about him. He made it about everybody else welcoming us into his home. So he was just that kind of amazing guy. But that's the things that we're missing. That's the leadership. That's the lead by example that we're missing, I think, in this generation. But super good guy. And he did everything he did was for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get into that with the next topic, and it's not a direct bash, but everything he did was for a reason, right? And at some point, though, it definitely was not all about the money, because he was not afraid to take his ball and go home either.
Yeah.
If he wanted to.
Yeah.
Definitely a team player, but if it wasn't all about the money, he wasn't going to sit around and be miserable by any means. So, well, man, we'll get into Terry Funk deep long form one day. Let's do a transition here to the big pay-per-view AEW All In. For months, you and I, Bill, have talked about and tried to project the attendance.
Right.
I think we started out at like 40. You said it's probably going to get to 60. You wouldn't be surprised. Comes out now that it is the most. You're froze up again. I hope you're there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. No, you're just doing a really good job statuing me, man.
I was listening. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you're like. You can't see me watching it, but Bill went completely still. It was like he was frozen.
300.
Anyway, Bill, they come out with and the news is now that it's the most most paid people ever attending a professional wrestling event. Hell of an accomplishment.
80. So what they've come out and said is
over 81,000.
Over 81,000 paid.
Yes, sir.
Which means they had 85,000 people there, but 81,000 people paid. And that's huge. I'm sure I'm going to jump the gun because I always do when you start these conversations. But no one gives a damn about the 81,000. Like, all of it's lost, and it's lost for one reason. Everything about the pay-per-view is lost. We don't need to talk about one match. We don't need to talk about one person. We don't need to talk about the build-up with Adam Cole and MJF. We don't need to talk about all these other, all that anybody wants to talk about now is the same crap that they were talking about last September. So what a shame that you have 81,000 plus paid people in this freaking stadium that's unbelievable.
With very little build-up to it, too. I'll cut you off with that.
Yeah.
The stories weren't exactly built up amazing.
Right.
I think the MJF being good. The rest of them kind of like...
Right. And what's the story that comes out? It's the most absurd thing. And that's what makes me sour about a lot of this stuff. And this is why I say I'm not the biggest AEW fan. And it's because of these reasons. Like, why am I going to get behind this?
It almost seems like and I know this happens in all wrestling, but they really want stuff to leak.
It's at the point you have to question, and I guess I'm not directly questioning Tony Khan, but I guess I am. And I would ask him, why is he allowing this? Because it's painting them all in a bad light. And I don't know, if ratings come into play anymore with Hulu and all that, you can record it and watch it back if the ratings are really important. But how much longer are these major television companies and all these sponsors and everything going to keep dealing with this stuff before they go, you know what, this is Bush League and we could have roller derby on and it'd be more entertaining and less chaotic? Because
it would work if it led to more viewers.
Yeah. And I think instead of it being, if this is the kind of work they're trying to do, I think they're losing their audience. And that was proven the other night when they showed the arena they were in. Where were they, in Chicago last night?
Oh, I know you're talking about. Yeah, a very small crowd. It couldn't have been more than. It could have been 5,000 people there, even, for sure.
And like, in a perfect world, 5,000 people is a great night. It's a great event. But
let's go back though. Let me cut you off. Let's go back. This does prove that there is a huge demand of this in the UK.
Yeah, all of Europe. You could, and they did it without announcing a match.
Yeah.
So a lot of people going, because they own a football company over there, they own a team. I don't care what the reason is. They got 81,000 plus people to pay to come and see an event that they weren't really sure who was going to be there, what was going to happen. Mercedes Moné didn't sell the place out. She was an afterthought. All these other things were afterthoughts. And instead of praising them and going, unbelievable, let's see what else you can do, we went back 12 months. We went backwards. And as a fan and as I don't know if I'm an analyst of wrestling or whatever I am, a former contributor to the business, it after a while you got, I got no time for this. Let me know when something good's going to happen that's worth my attention and my time and me getting worked up about. Like, I'm literally getting worked up that literally 12 months later they're back in the same spot they were after doing such an amazing thing.
It was. I actually watched the pay-per-view afterwards. I'm not going to tell you how, but I did enjoy it for the most part. I thought it was some good stuff. It was a successful event, man, all in all. Thought there was some stadium match for me was kind of, I don't know if you watched it, but there was some stuff going on in some of those matches where I had no clue what was going on. The stadium match with Jon Moxley and the huge extravagant event that went everywhere. There's a million different things going on. It was hard to keep track of. But all in all, though, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but all in all, it was a good show, man. And you're right. I think this was something they could have come out of really hot. They come out of it now with, and we'll briefly touch on what happened. Everybody listening probably knows. If you don't, Jack Perry, CM Punk confrontation got physical. Let me ask you this, Bill. Okay, so we talk about my work that I do every day.
Right.
You're automatically fired if you do that.
Yeah.
You're just fired, right? Then, like, especially if you're an executive or something, you would never see the light of day. How common is this physicality in wrestling that just get an altercation, actually get physical? How many times have you seen that? And I don't want to say like a small. I want to talk about in ECW, maybe WCW, WWE.
I've seen it. I've seen it, but I've never seen it. And now you're talking about two different generations a little bit, though. Before there was social media and stuff, but you still couldn't beat the shit out of somebody at a corporate job 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Right, but you'd only have it be a stooge who went and told, right? And this is where I'll get in trouble. If it's the boys handling this and you want to fight, let's be men and fight, and then let's move on. I've always said there's better fights in the back than there are in front of people. But the point is, there's people waiting now for this shoe to drop every night so they can be the ones to give it up. And that, to me, that's what's painting.
Explain that analogy.
There's people who are waiting, going, oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Let me get on my phone. Let me do this. Let me make sure it happens. Let me make sure there's other people around that can see it, so I'm not the one being finger pointed that I'm the one who let it leak.
We knew during the CM Punk match that it happened. That's how fast it got out.
That's what, and I don't know if it's the brainchild of, hey, let's give them more to talk about, but it takes you completely out of what's happening physically. And from what I've read, I guess Samoa Joe had to convince Punk to go out because Punk was going to hold everybody up. Now, again, this is all just hearsay. I don't know it for myself. I'm going off of what everybody else is going off of. But now they're saying they have tape of the altercation. So you got these guys fighting. Okay, let's blame the young kid who has no freaking respect for anybody. Or let's blame the veteran who's in the same spot he was in a year ago and around controversy. Contradictory to what Eric Bischoff says, right? Controversy makes cash or whatever the heck it is. This ain't making cash. This is losing an audience. And this has got to start frustrating people.
It's frustrating because it's not going to go anywhere. The Young Bucks aren't going to work with CM Punk.
No.
Maybe Kenny Omega. I don't think so. The Elite's not going to work with CM Punk. Jack Perry's really not in a position to work with CM Punk, honestly. But even so now, it's not going to happen. So it's really just backstage drama that, and I guess in WWE you see where they've kind of used that before and other wrestling. But it just that's not going to happen. So it's literally just.
But in WCW and ECW, we were smart enough to at least turn it into a storyline where people could work around it and make something out of it. Here, you just look like a bunch of schmucks who can't control themselves and throwing shots like Jack Perry. Okay, did he need to go on camera and say what he said about the glass and all this other stuff? Like, you haven't made your bones in this business to do that. But how long has Punk been in the business to where those little things should have got under his skin? And, and then we hear all his travel was this, but nobody else had job. All these things we're hearing were what was wrong with the company. What's wrong with the locker room? What's wrong with this? And so what if you get a couple guys and girls afterward go, no, we all feel great. We're one big happy family. What a bunch of crap. People who are watching now, I think, are watching to watch stuff fall apart. I don't think they're no longer interested in the 65-minute high spots. I think they're watching to see what kind of drama, BS crap can I see next. And after a while, as a talent, you've got to want to get away from that. You've got to want to get away from that. And where's the leadership? Where's the Undertaker kind of guy? Where are these guys? Everybody says Bradshaw's a bully and all these other things that certain people complain about, but where's the leadership? Where's, instead of having Tony having his 6 favorite people in the whole world, and that's what he bases his company off of, and who gets over and who doesn't, where's the leadership that this stuff isn't happening? There's no one, the boys aren't policing themselves because there are no boys. There's guys who think they're veterans, and if you're a veteran because you've been doing this a long time, then that makes you a veteran. Yes, they have a lot of veterans. But you think Christian Cage is going to get involved in this, knowing that ridiculous elementary school crap is going on? No, he's going to stay away from it. And the people that are smart are going to listen to him and stay out of it too. But if he's got the same cast of characters all the time, that are half of them are helping you run your company, and the other half are making money off of what you're doing in the company, and you can't control them, then sooner or later, all the fingers got to go to Tony Khan. Because all the experience and knowledge he has back there, they're not doing anything. And if I'm worked up and upset like this, they really have to be worked up and upset. Because how much longer do you want to, now you know what it is? Now just let me get my check and shut up and do whatever I got to do. But there's no interest as a fan when the biggest outcome of the biggest show, and I don't care how many guys came out last night and said that the biggest show in wrestling history, it's all under the bridge, because all they're talking about is the kids can't play together in the sandbox. That's what they're talking about.
They're poking the bear, and the bear's cranky and angry, and at this point, CM Punk has no control. It doesn't seem like he has a whole lot of control over what's going on. So, I mean, it's rough, and I'm a mega CM Punk fan. You know that. I almost wore my shirt tonight just to see what you'd say.
I'm a fan of Phil, but I'm just not a fan of what's going on. And I'm not a fan of, now you read and hear, depending on who you listen to, what podcasts, like Tony Khan and Punk got into it. When does Tony stop worrying about making these huge announcements and being a TV personality and start running the company that can be very beneficial, not only just to him, but to these athletes and people he has working for him? Because right now it's just a bunch of goofs working hard just to be sidelined by the headlines are nothing about the talent. It has nothing to do with talent, these headlines.
Yeah, eventually you got to get to a point when you do nip this stuff in the butt.
Yeah.
And I think the Collision was a great thought, and they've actually had some great matches. But it kind of just isolated I don't want to, isolated, not a good word. It kind of just delayed things from blowing up again, I guess.
Yeah. It separated
because it was never, I don't know, we don't know what's going on, but it doesn't appear as if anything was ever really fixed.
No, they were all pacified. Let me create this show so you guys can go over here and then we'll separate. But now you see the crossovers. Some are coming over and some are, because it's the wrestling business. You cannot just decide you're going to put this show on here and this show on here and let's keep the animals in separate cages. Either there's got to be a kumbaya moment and let's make money, or move on. They have so many people that I don't understand why it's the same people every week to begin with. But if it's the same people in these childish, ridiculous conversations that have ruined the biggest event in wrestling, to me, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. And then we wonder why we've come so far as wrestlers, pro wrestlers, and sports entertainment for people. But listen, the top news was Bray Wyatt. The impact he's had on so many people and fans and what he's done, and we're going to get to know Bray Wyatt. And then what replaces it? Skirmish. Video. We have video. There's a fight here. There's a fight here. This one's fighting with this one. Nothing about the matches. Nothing about all these other things. Right? So then, to me, it opens the door for guys like me to really start to question, what is this all about? Is this just a hobby? And whatever happens. And I know I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just voicing my frustration with a product I really am been struggling to stay with consistently. And as an old guy, an old timer, I don't want to be around that nonsense. I don't know how many people would. And then the trickle-down effect of it affecting all these other guys,
You want it to do well because it's important for wrestling, for AEW to do well.
But it's
right. I mean, is it not important? Is it not beneficial, AEW being around and doing well? Is that not beneficial to wrestling?
Competition breeds competition and makes success. And if you're competing against someone in something, you're working harder, you're trying, and everybody's rising to the occasion. And I think AEW is a great program in theory. But watching what it's doing, like ECW was getting knocked for years because all they do is hardcore stuff and this and that. But AEW is getting knocked because they're just a bunch of kids who can't control themselves. You've got a bunch of grown men and women who can't control themselves. They're literally tattling on each other on social media. They're literally burying each other. And then they want to know why there's no competition. They want to know why I just don't understand the concept of who is running the asylum here. Or is that the blueprint? Hey, let's just give everybody a place to come and feel free and creative and nobody answer to anybody, and let's just see how long we can run with this. At the end of the day, Tony Khan could shut the doors tomorrow and he's going to be fine. All these other men and women are screwed. They're screwed because nobody's doing it. There's 3 or 4 that may be doing something where they can go make a move and jump ship. The rest of them are screwed.
Yeah, there might even be more in that, but the point is, there's some that could probably never. Some of them are doing it because they really enjoy it, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. If the majority of them, yeah, it's a bad scenario. I think back to me, it's crazy how fast this all came out. So it literally had to happen, and instead of focusing on everything else going on that night, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to leak this information to Brian Alvarez, Dave Meltzer and company. I'm going to leak this online. Like, it happened so fast. It got out so fast. And that's remarkable to me. It immediately started taking away from the pay-per-view during the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
That's disappointing. I see what you're saying.
And you almost... So they announced that they're going to be back there next year. So you almost want to go, well, who cares? The people like the live experience. That's a given. 81,000 plus love the live experience. But what about the other people? What about the people in the back? What about all the people who put the time and effort to getting there? What about the sponsors? What about this is what all my hard work was, so we could talk about a slap fight? So we could talk about these things that people are not. Hey, did anybody talk about Hook beating Jack Perry? No. Did anybody really care that Punk beat Samoa Joe? No. Nobody cared about FTR beating the Bucks. So much so that they decided to pair them up for the next pay-per-view. That's how much none of this mattered.
Yeah, we'll talk about a few more things here before we get off this one. I think it'll be bad. I think it'd be really bad. They go to Chicago for the next one without CM Punk. And I do think I was surprised that FTR came out with the win over the Young Bucks. And I was happy.
But where's the follow-up to that, Jeff? Where the follow-up was instantly the next time we saw them. Hey, just respect. Okay, let's bring in the Gun Club and let's go 4-on-4. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The storytelling's a whole other thing. Yeah, I mean, I get that.
So I'm just not invested in it. Don't get me wrong. I'm an FTR fan, but I'm not invested in what they're doing. I know what they can do. I want to see that. I don't want to see this other stuff. Right? And they did all of this without naming a match, and we talked about this before. Then they start putting these matches together. So there's some interest, but it's all lost on what took place that night. And this is just my opinion. Everything that happened that night in Wembley was lost by the fact that the biggest outcome of it was Punk didn't like his travel. Punk had words with Perry. Punk had words with Khan. Perry was sent home. He was walked out. Punk was escorted out.
Punk choked out Perry.
Yeah. Now the big thing is, oh no, what if Punk doesn't show up in Chicago? Well, Punk wasn't there for the first 2 years or so when they were in business, and they were doing fine. But now he's
definitely been a part of the biggest gates and
don't get me wrong.
like
so
that.
when is business how much longer does the business have to suffer for the money? How much longer are you going to get the people to buy into this stuff? And then no matter who puts you in that position, if Punk's not in Chicago, there's going to be people asking for their money back. Okay? Now they're dealing with that now. Well, we can't have that. We got to bring Punk back. But 17 other people will be unhappy if Punk's there because it's got to go a certain way. Well, then we got to make another show. We got to do this. We got to do that. But how about someone just stand up, put the gavel down on the table and go, by the way, this is a company. Here's how we're going to run it. Like everything else, you have X amount of strikes, and then you got to go. To your point, the corporate thing never happened. You're gone. You're gone. Now, you could be gone quietly. You could be gone quietly with a year of severance, so you keep your mouth shut and sign an agreement, or you can do whatever. But these guys are blatantly, to your point, before the show was even going on, you knew what was happening. So there's inmates running this asylum, and they've got to get control of it.
Let's pivot. What does this do for WWE? The success that we saw in London. Two questions here: does Vince McMahon and Triple H and company, are they thinking they need to beat that? And the second part of it is, does this open up more avenues for more major events overseas?
I think it opens up more avenues. I think WWE, they have India coming up, and so they've already proven they can go worldwide in places they haven't been before, and
they have been going. I mean, Money in the Bank was the O2 Arena.
Yeah.
But as far as, let's just say, like a WrestleMania, a SummerSlam, a Royal Rumble, a Survivor Series, something, do you think this is more proof that that's something that should be done?
And you know why it should be done, and it will be done, and it will be done better? Let's say they don't get 81,000 people. Let's say they get 72,000 people paid. It's going to be a positive experience.
Well, they're going to have more at the gate. What I haven't seen is the gate information of this. That will be, I don't know how that will compare to a WrestleMania.
So
probably not.
And the thing is, at that show in WrestleMania, you're not getting sound bites and people on social media talking about how the shows and all this thing, and you're not talking about all these people. You're not having Seth Rollins and AJ Styles having a fist fight before the match. It just doesn't happen. And to me, that's the issue with giving people so much freedom to be who you are, have fun, enjoy it. That's not fun. That's not business. But to your question, I think it opens the doors, and I think that's what WWE needs to see and go, wait a minute. If they did that with what they had, imagine what we could do the way we do things. So I think it opens the doors for bigger things like that. The answer is yes, pay-per-view wise and all those things. I think
WWE is also very specific about the market and where they go into.
Yes.
They're looking at, it's kind of like the Super Bowl. Do you have enough hotels? Do you have enough?
Right.
I think the business end of WWE is probably a little bit more detailed on that. Can you accommodate this? Because that's the one thing about London that you hear. Can they accommodate all the incoming people? And obviously they did. Obviously a lot of it was local, and that shows there's a craving. But WrestleMania, everybody's there from every country. And I'm sure all of those too.
Right.
But how do you accommodate that? They basically bid. They bid, and there's deep discussions when these things are decided for these major WWE pay-per-views.
Yeah.
But I think, for sure, I'd like to see something bigger there. But do you think, get you on the spot here, you've been around these individuals, is it important for that to beat that record? Is that something they're actively discussing the first meeting after all these numbers came out?
No, I think do they already have it beat or close to have it beat for WrestleMania? Already?
It's close, but they're saying that was the most paid customers ever to go to a professional wrestling match.
Right.
So do you think that's important?
No, I don't think it is.
Because the gate's not comparable. I'm going to assume the gate...
That's my point.
Is not comparable at all.
Did you sell 81,000 plus tickets at $50 a piece? Or are you selling $70,000 tickets at $350 a piece?
You can't go to WrestleMania for $50, I'll tell you.
Right. So, and I'm not saying they sold them cheap. I'm just saying... it's apples and oranges. I think the gate WWE is a business structure that is fail-safe. I think the number would be cool if they could beat it. But what was WWE already talking about? They're already going there, right? They're already booking the UK and all that stuff. And they're already talking about WrestleMania's not till April, and both nights have over how many? 70,000 something, you know. So I don't think that's one of the records they're now. If it was in,
you don't think Vince McMahon's saying, "Damn it, pal, we got to beat 81,000 paid customers"?
No, because I think the numbers are what matters. I think, to your point, the gate. Let's see what the gate is. Let's see what, you know, and then you go into the buy rates and all that stuff. But the biggest thing is they're going to beat it every time because they're not going to have this nonsense. They're going to have great feedback, and they're going to be in the same town in WrestleMania the next night to give the people a double shot because their ticket gives them more. They went to Wembley and then they came back to Chicago. And now they're doing a pay-per-view this week. And one does not follow the other. So
Sure.
it's just random stuff going on right now. It's just a guy putting together a wrestling show.
But WWE has had stuff like this happen, but give me a second here to explain it.
Yeah.
They have had stuff like this happen on a pretty bad scale. Vince McMahon and Bret Hart, physical altercation. So many different physical altercations. But I think WWE's put that in the past, and really the business model and everything they developed since then is why they are world-class publicly traded company. I'm not sure they could operate the way they were in the 90s, 80s, and do what they're doing today. So for AEW, it's a lot of growing pains, but they can still get past this. But hey, you said it earlier. It's different times. There's a good chance that when Vince McMahon and all this happened, if that happened today, there would have been a lot more we'd heard about it with Bret Hart and all that.
Yeah.
But AEW still has the chance. They just have to kind of they have to tighten the strings. WWE's tighten the strings. The Chris Benoit thing, tragedy happened. What did WWE do? Tighten the strings.
Yeah.
So I think that AEW is more than capable of doing that. They just have to get, I don't know what team they have, what structure they have. I don't think they've got a board, a director. WWE's got a whole system, and they've really tightened that down and tightened up their business model. And I bring that up because we can't just say WWE's perfect, right? Because they've seen...
Right. No, absolutely.
We've seen crazy stuff happen. WCW is owned by very rich people. It had stuff happen. Bash at the Beach. Everybody's talked about that recently. It could be a crap show in WCW, but it's the business model that Vince McMahon and that company's created, and that's something that Tony Khan and AEW, I'm not saying copy it because they got to do their own thing, but how they handle the company will have to change for exponential growth, I would imagine.
But at the very least, who did Vince have to model it after? Nothing. It was trial by error. AEW's got all this in front of them to use the history of this business. The worst part for me is they've got the knowledge of men that have been involved in it. And where's the sit down? Where's the brain trust that's going, come on, Tony, do it this way. And let's take Bret Hart. Bret Hart was gone for how many years before he came back? Shawn Michaels, up until a point in
2010
for how many years before he came back? All these people gone for how long before they came back to do business? There's been a business model put in front of AEW that they could follow. All the good and bad from WCW and WWE. And they have the people in play in the back that have lived through it, learned from it, survived it, and been on the other side of it, and they're not using it. Why would you try to test the waters again to be the B team? You have a legitimate chance and are doing great at being competition. But now it's a different kind of competition. Now it's like, let me go see what they're doing. I'm not, and I'm speaking for me, I'm not interested in one storyline. And the one I'm interested in, we didn't hear anything about. MJF have done an amazing job. We haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, well done for sure. They did a great job. Yeah, but that's not what's being talked about. We'll wrap this up, but What do you think? I was a big fan of TNA after 2010.
Yeah.
2006, 2012 time period. What do you think they would have been capable of if they had the resources that AEW has?
I think they'd still be running strong. I think they'd be the WCW to the WWE, if not even. I think there was a ton of potential there, and like a lot of things, when you start bringing in more people and more creative, and this guy has his stuff, and you see what happens, it implodes, right? But
and they didn't have much money. They didn't have much money either. Let's be honest.
The person in charge was not as knowledgeable as she would have liked to thought she was. So,
which is okay, I think.
It's okay if you learn.
Yeah.
Tony,
but if they wouldn't have had the money that AEW has.
Oh, they'd still be around. They'd still be around. But I'd much rather chase the Impact product and try to find it on whatever channel I have to find that now on, instead of, because I literally could not watch AEW for 3 weeks, turn it on the fourth week, and I haven't missed a thing. And that's a shame, because there's so much talent, there's so much stuff, and you see guys that are struggling to make things good. I feel like I see it on their faces when they're out there. And then you see the ones that are just, wow, I got my hands in the cookie jar. But this backstage stuff makes everybody look foolish, and it opens up the press to everybody start bagging on wrestling again. And it's hard, man. It's hard to swim upstream that way. I'm frustrated for them. Like, I know it's coming, like, this is by no means an AEW hate rant. I have a lot of friends that work there. I have a lot of people that I'm very interested in seeing what their futures are. And there's a lot of great talent and great people there, but it's all put under the rug by the nonsense. We all know there's nonsense. There's fights in the NFL. There's guys doing this in baseball. We see it on the field. They charge the field. They clean the dugouts and all. But you go on with the game.
What's next? What does AEW do next? That's what's going to... So, all the drama aside, you just had this great moment in professional wrestling history. Historic moment. What do you do next to better yourself? And I think that's what's going to come out of this. All the drama aside, we'll have to see what happens next with the company. And just to close this part of the conversation off, I've seen a lot of people kind of hating on WWE. Like, it's not really comparable. I think WWE is a financial powerhouse at this point in time, and a lot of things go into play. Hell, you watch that pay-per-views, everything is sponsored, like we've talked about. Every replay, they have got everything down to a T with this. I think it all comes down to financials there, not necessarily how many people are there.
Yeah.
So I don't have much more to say on that topic besides that, but AEW, they'll have to see what happens next. They're going to have to see if they can get past this. And how they're going to get past it, but how are they going to handle it?
Yeah.
And what's next? Because they didn't exactly go and sell out Market Square Arena the next night.
Right.
After.
And so just like a little side note, because I agree, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I think this pay-per-view coming up, I hope for them it's just a good, clean pay-per-view where the work is good, everybody's doing their thing. But how are you going to convince a Mercedes Moné to come into that company? How are you going to convince these other people?
Money.
Yeah, but, money only... If you're... And that goes back to what I said. You can make your money on the independents and making appearances in Japan and everything else. Why would a Will Ospreay sign and put his name on a dotted line? Like, well, what are these guys thinking? They got to be thinking, wait a minute, there's less fun and I'm making the same money. And
I think, they still bring in the other names on AEW too, which we've talked about before. They got to continue to develop their people.
Yes,
they've got to really.
Where the hell is Wardlow?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to stir the pot. I really wish.
I'm a big Wardlow fan too, man. I don't know. There's a couple people, right, where they just kind of sporadically show up and go off, and they got to really. You have Ring of Honor. What are you going to do with it?
What are you going to do with it is right, because I don't care. Like, to be honest, I didn't care about the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions because I knew nothing about them. So I just didn't. And so you telling me that MJF and Adam Cole are going to be going to ROH shows and defending them? I don't understand. So I think it's definitely right now it's 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag.
So do you think, and this, what a segue to this discussion, you're a developmental guy, you were part of NXT opening up, and we talked about that in detail before, and we will more one day. Do they need a better feeder system?
Yes.
And that's a problem with youth sports today. Like football is in a lot of trouble because statistically showing it just does not get near the participation at a youth level that it used to, which is probably ultimately going to catch up with it. I'm not saying the NFL is going to die, but it makes things a lot more challenging when you don't have what the NBA has done. They've gone really global, so their pool of attention and players is from all over the world.
Right.
NBA. Before you just have maybe a few foreign guys, what they've tapped into is this whole foreign feeder system, and they developed they call it the G League, where it's an alternative, and they're trying to really get away from you have to go to college isn't for everybody, right? They're trying to build up a system, and people are actually more and more people are doing it. In this year's draft, a crap ton of the top 10 picks were from the G League.
Yep.
So these were kids that said, hey, college isn't right for me. I'm going to go make a little bit of money right now in an environment that is setting me up directly for the NBA. Let me tag it into professional wrestling here. Like NXT is for WWE.
Yes.
Do you think AEW eventually, as they get and we talked about how they advance as a company, do you think this developmental system will have to really develop there? Because WWE's really bounced all over the place with OVW, Deep South, and what they have now is they're really developing them in-house, because even OVW back in the day with Jim Cornette and all that, that's still a lot of Jim Cornette's take on things.
Yeah.
Jim Cornette's way. I love it. It may not be the best WWE way, according to the Vince McMahon. I don't know. But right now, man, they're literally building these future stars up exactly, and you were a part of it. You can speak to this exactly with the program, the way WWE is.
Yeah.
Is this that important to AEW eventually? That was a long-winded segue. I'm sorry.
No, it's great because it comes down. I think it's very simple. There's no reason the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta couldn't be built up to be a studio and be the ROH show. This is where your Anna Jays come in. This is where all these other people that need reps, instead of just putting them on TV and it being less than adequate. And it's not the performers. There's no reps. Imagine how much better Jade Cargill would be if she had a place every week you were there. There's no reason why the Nightmare Factory couldn't become the NXT for AEW. There's no reason they can't invest a couple $100,000 for cameras and seats and everything else like we did in Deep South. We put the bleachers into the cameras and we ran a show. But they need reps. They need a place this is what we want you to do. This is where you take those great minds behind the scene. You put 4 of them down in Atlanta with them. And this is what we're working on. Here's the product. Here's where we are. Okay, looking good. Boom. A la Rhea Ripley, a la all these other people, right? I think there's an opportunity there, but I don't know if they're necessarily looking at it like a business right now, instead of just a big place for guys to play that were really good at what they did elsewhere, and to me are now less than where they're at. And I know that didn't answer your question, but I agree with you. I think there should be a developmental system, but it can't be on TV every week. That can't be your developmental system the way they're doing it, because their main shows is what they're using as a developmental system. And then you see guys, you don't see guys. You see guys, you don't see guys. Like, where's Wardlow? Where are these guys? Where's Hobbs going to get better? I don't know, man. It's just there's such a disconnect, because I'm not sure if they want to be a full-blown wrestling company or they want to prove that they just have the best talent out there who can do stuff every week.
I was on a Twitter space last night that was amazing. Gabe Saprowski, Ring of Honor guy.
Yep.
Was holding a Twitter space last night, and he was dropping some great things, man. He was saying that you have to really want to get better and put in the work and time and go out there and get it. And he brought up an interesting fact that there's been like no independent tryouts for WWE for a year. He's like, that should make you mad, because that's saying that they don't think they need to go out and get people off the independent scene, because they're confident enough with what they're able to homebrew there in their developmental center. So I do think the independent scene's like really important. I just don't know if it's the right approach for AEW to kind of come across like an independent scene at this point in time. The company obviously has proven that it can, and I don't know if it's made much money yet because it's spent so much. Any business has to have, I don't remember, Tony Khan probably said, after this mark right here, this amount of years, whatever, I want to be able to start doing this or whatever.
Right.
But I do think the independent wrestling is still important, and I certainly hope it's around. But when Gabe brought that up, he's like, hey, like, they're not really tryouts right now. That should upset you guys, you wrestlers. You gotta really go out and prove yourself. Get in to your point, get in the repetition, get the interest back going, because there is so many benefits from having NXT, obviously. But at the end of the day, you still have to have other things that I call it a farmer system, like a feed system, because I'm a former basketball coach. You really have to have things that are funneling, right? And some of these indies are going to have to funnel into that too. But for AEW, they have some infrastructure there to be able to try to, and I think this would help get a better handle on things as well. We talk about behavior, all that. We've seen a lot of that get this goes to the wayside, and they're gone in WWE.
Yeah.
They don't make it. They don't stick around. Whether it's their fault or not, and hell, they come back a lot of times. And when they've had some more experience or whatever. I mean, I think for AEW though, it's beneficial. I think they have Ring of Honor. They have some infrastructure there. They just really got to figure out how they want to do things and be consistent, because right now it kind of seems like, hey, the Young Bucks want to do things this way. CM Punk wants to do things this way. FTR wants to do things this way. Well, how does Tony Khan want to do things? How's AEW going to do things? I think the next couple of years, now that we're 3 years, actually today was the 4-year anniversary, I believe, 2019, of when Chris Jericho, and I posted this on this day in professional wrestling history, there's a plug, of Chris Jericho becoming the first champion there. We're several years in. We got to start figuring out for AEW how we want to do things, because now it's kind of seems like a free-for-all, which is kind of cool for a while. When you're a real wrestling fan, it's kind of like, what the hell where are we going? What are we trying to do here? What are we getting? Who are we getting behind? Why are we getting behind them? And what's the plan?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think a lot of going back to the independents, for a long time, we stole from all the independents. We took the top people, which then let the independent mentality become, well, they'll come and find me. No, you have to get out there and you have to do more. But the flip side to that is, now how can you get out there when Tony Khan's letting his contracted talent go and work anywhere they want when they're not on TV? There's so many disconnects, and making it so much harder. And now they're getting one version of how the business kind of goes from, let's say, WWE people, and then they see AEW guys come in and do what they want. They go, well, I can do that too. Well, you still got to make a name for yourself. You still got to make have some kind of reputation and be reliable. But I think the independents are struggling right now. The ones I've been to and when I go do the seminars, because a lot of the attitude is, well, this is what they're doing, and they'll come and find me. And I always go, no, you have to give them a reason to come and find you. But now the ones that are locked into AEW, they have no reason. They're there and nothing's going to happen. And a lot of it, you've got to be happy with just getting a paycheck.
I know I've gone off a lot of it.
They have a world of potential. I would take the Nightmare Factory and everything they built there, because I know there's a big gym attached to it and everything else. I would turn that into the FCW like Tampa was, and build from there and give your people a reason to be there every day. How about you give them a reason? You're paying them. Be there every day. Well, I don't want to move to Atlanta. I'm very happy showing up once a week from LA. No, if you want to be used and I'm paying you, you're in a contract. Here's why I want you. There's got to be, I think I heard Bully Ray talk. Who's the head of talent relations? Who's the head of this? Who's the head of that? You have this multi-million-dollar company and you're running it like a mom and pop shop. Utilize JR, utilize these guys, utilize Malenko, Anderson, Jerry Lynn, all these other guys, Frankie Kazarian. I don't even know what they're doing anymore. Christopher Daniels, I hear they're all in the back and they're all part of this, and the Jeff Jarrett's the executive this and that, and Jeff Jarrett's doing more on TV, probably because he knows there ain't nothing for him to do behind the scenes. You know what I mean? So it's just, and it's not, and again, it's not bagging on AEW. It's frustrating to see the business model's been put in front of you. Learn from it, make it better, and do your own thing. Not just do your own thing.
We'll wrap things up, but going back to my original point, the feeder system.
Yeah.
Do you think AEW benefits from structure from that?
I absolutely do.
Because you see what I'm saying about right now? It's kind of like everybody's kind of doing their own thing, which is super cool at first. But now I just often get confused on what's going on.
Yeah, I think it gives the younger guys opportunity to learn some storytelling. It gives, to have these things in play instead of just showing up on TV and trying to prove a point. Or
what's the AEW way? What's the we don't know that yet.
I think it's very willy-nilly. Like, hey, you're on, and I'd like to really know the number of how many talent are actually on the AEW roster. I know how many we see every week. I want to know how many talent are on.
I looked a while ago. It was an astonishing number, like over 200. It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. I just don't know what they're doing with them. They don't, like, to your point, they don't have NXT or a Power Factor. They don't have any of that that I know of. And I think, but my point was, I think that just structure starting at the bottom really will benefit everything just for the sake of consistency for AEW.
Yeah, because you can't go to the Nightmare Factory for 3 months, learn how to take bumps at the ropes and be on TV and be a TV star.
Yeah.
And you can't be consistent. So I want to know, does AEW plan on opening up live events to where they're doing more? And then I want to see the business model, right? Then they'll see what's really consistent. And the consistency is inconsistency.
Not really any live events either, yeah. So I don't know.
So I'm with you. I'm a big believer in the feeder system. I was a big proponent of it. Then I am now. I had a lot to do with how it's run and the model of that. And I think they would benefit a lot from it. I just think they would benefit from the people that are there. And I don't see them taking advantage of that. And by them, the main person I don't see taking advantage of it is Tony. And that's just on the surface. Like I said, I don't know the man. I've met him one time. I think he's a great guy. What he's doing is amazing for the business.
Oh yeah,
but it's getting old.
We're pitching this pay-per-view for London. Like, it's got to be amazing, London.
Yeah.
Well, like, what else are you building?
Yeah.
Are you building from the ground? I get it. You built from the ground up because he literally started this company with some guys. But what's going on at the bottom here?
There's nothing. If you're not the main guy, there's nothing for you. And when you see it, they're like, well, who the hell is that? And then you don't see him again for another month. So you forgot who they were in the first place. So
that's why he's got to let them go out and do other stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
Because right now their experience has got to be them going out and doing other stuff because they're not going to get it within the company.
I would turn that QT Marshall and the Nightmare Factory into a developmental system. And
yeah,
man,
we've gone on for an hour and a half here already.
Oh, geez. And again, I just want to say this again. It sounds like it, and it sounds like a cheesy thing at the end. This is not bagging on AEW. Like, if I didn't think there was anything worth talking about, I'd be like, come on, let's talk about something else. But there's a lot to it. And I think if you and I are this passionate about it and can come up with this and have these conversations, then they should be having these same conversations.
I'd hope so, yeah. But I don't, it doesn't seem like it for sure.
Yeah.
Well, man, we'll wrap this one up. We talked about next week. We'll come back with a full deep dive into Wyndham Rotona, Bray Wyatt. In the meantime, we hope we give you something to think about, maybe with AEW besides the drama going on in AEW. What else can AEW focus on? What else would you like to see in professional wrestling? These are great discussions. We just hope that it leads to some growth. And like I said, AEW is very important for professional wrestling.
Yes.
So hats off to them for the amazing pay-per-view and all the success.
Just keep it going. Just keep it going and realize what you're working so hard for. What's your legacy going to be? That's what I want people to think of. What did I give back to the business, or what did I leave the business? Not what did I take from the business. You know?
Not what it took for me. What did you? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like that. Hey, we've got all sorts of we've got a huge catalog going now. We've approaching 30 episodes in, nice. Which is crazy. Doing this because we love it. The sponsorships aren't rolling in or anything, but damn it, the listenership is growing, and I think we're putting out some good content. So I encourage you to go back, listen to a lot of the deep dives we've done. Bill Goldberg, especially the United States Championship, 5-parter on the history of that title, and tons of other great things that we've been able to build up in the last 6-7 months, Bill, which is crazy. So yeah, go to BillDeMott.com. It's got links to the podcast on YouTube and all the other podcast listening platforms. And make sure you check out the foundation and the amazing work Bill's doing there. That is also very important. Bill, you're back. I just gave all the plugs. I talked about how we had a good catalog and they should check it out. And I also plugged the BillDeMott.com and the foundation. Email BillDeMottPod@gmail.com or reach us on social media. I'm Podcast Father. He's Bill DeMott.
Yeah, keep with the questions. I'm connected now with Vince's Mustache on Twitter, so I'm excited about that. Keep the questions coming in, and we'll keep doing this, man. Almost 30 episodes in, and this is good stuff, man. I really, really do enjoy it. And again, you're doing an awesome job, Jeff, of steering this ship, and I just look forward to what we do every week.
Me too, man. I appreciate spending time with you, and hope everybody's enjoying it. We'll continue to try our best. So
that's it.
Hey, until next week, all of you keep enjoying the content and keep being yourself and keep being great.